Today we are discussing one of the most relevant topic of the time.
To screen that is in the hands of every toddler.
The child stops magically.
There is this zombie stare. Is this actually affecting the child's brain development? Is this affecting the child's sleep cycles? Are there any changes that are happening to this young developing brain?
The melatonin level starts rising. That's when you get a cue to sleep. He's tired, doctor, we could know that, but he's just not able to fall asleep.
Child has not hit the deep sleep button, and so the growth hormone also gets affected.
When the screen is there, and typically when we have the smart screens now, one video the child doesn't like, and if they're watching reels, after every 30 seconds they have a urge to go to the next, go to the next. So there is no time for them to understand
what is it actually doing. It's tricking the brain into thinking that this is actually the daytime.
Talking about, also called suprachiasmatic nucleus, starts having more rhythmicity to the day and night. It is like an internal clock in the body which decides when we are awake, when we are asleep, when do we eat, do certain things at certain time of the day.
Right.
But there are a lot of external factors which will control this internal bodies.
So this growth hormone is a hormone which is released again from the hypothalamic area of the brain, and it is important, like the name suggests, of course, for the growth. So imagine a child who's not actually able to sleep deep because, like Dr. Prajakta mentioned, about the REM fragmentation, right? So it's fragmented sleep throughout, and the child has not hit the deep sleep button, and so the growth hormone also gets affected.
The child is anxious, he's crying, and the parents invariably remove the mobile and show it some cartoon, Cocomelon and whatnot.
Physically present, but mentally not engaging with the child because there's already entertainment going on. Is speaking actually 500 to 1,000 fewer words to that child. So there is an opportunity lost here.
Yeah. Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Credit to Campus, where pediatric science meets everyday parenting. I'm Dr. Prajakta Joshi Ranade. I'm a consultant pediatrician and a pediatric rheumatologist. And joining me,
I'm Dr. Lakshmi Menon. I'm a consultant neonatologist and pediatrician, and both of us are working in Bangalore.
Today we are discussing one of the most relevant topic of the times. Yes, we all have it on our hands all the time. Isn't it, Lakshmi?
Yes. So we are talking about the blue screen. The blue screen that is in the hands of every toddler. There is this zombie stare that the child is looking at on the screens all the time.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever wondered, is this actually affecting the child's brain development? Is this affecting the child's sleep cycles? Are there any changes that are happening to this young developing brain?
So before we begin our discussion today on how titled Smart Screen Parenting, let's get to understand how is the magnitude of the problem. Because unless we understand what the problem is, we cannot reach to solution to find what could be the best use of the technology today.
Actually, that's
so. It often intrigues me and often makes me worried when I see a child being calm when he is agitated or frustrated using a smart screen.
Yeah.
This is a common OPD scenario where the child is coming for a vaccination. The child is anxious, he's crying, and the parents invariably remove the mobile and show it some cartoon, Cocomelon and whatnot.
Yeah.
And the child stops magically.
Absolutely.
Freezes.
Yeah.
This is and I've seen so many examples, even in the wards, with small kids, like as old as 6 months old, admitted for bronchiolitis. And this child, when we've gone near to the child is obviously anxious and crying, and the mother immediately shows the screen and the child freezes.
Absolutely.
We have seen the similar episode in restaurants, isn't it, Lakshmi?
Yeah.
Children are glued to the chair because they are hooked onto that screen.
Right.
Yeah.
We see grandparents being so proud that their little grandson or grandchild is actually learning how to operate the on-off button. And apparently, he just switches it on and switches it off, and usko abhi se malum hai how to operate this tab.
Yeah.
It seems to be a matter of great pride.
True. But is it really a matter to be proud of, or are we looking at something that we are not aware of as of today?
Actually, so let's just delve a little bit deeper maybe into this scenario right now.
True. But Lakshmi, other thing is that a lot of parents would say that the minute I start writing no screens on the prescription, which I have started doing as a pediatrician now, that the parents will often be intrigued and will look at me with a question mark on their face. And if I have to play devil's advocate today, or for that matter, parents advocate today, they'll say, but ma'am, hamara beta to khali educational content dikhta hai. They are learning so many things on the screen. They are learning new skills, new language. He's coding, whatnot, isn't it?
Absolutely. So let's look at it a little bit deeper. Hence the podcast Smart Screen Parenting today.
Yeah.
And so grab your coffees, your blue light filters, and let's go into the depth of this.
Okay. So I know that because this is going to be a medically exhaustive podcast, because there will be a lot of medical words which are used, we wanted to divide into various segments so that it's easier for us and the audience to understand and dissect in details.
Sounds right.
True?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's begin with the first part, and we call it the effect of blue light on the brain.
Yeah. Okay. So remember the blue light that we talked in front of the toddler, the blue screen that the child is staring at, the zombie stare that's going at. So what is this blue light actually doing to the brain? So let's just first understand what is the normal sleep cycle of the toddler.
True.
So here we are looking at something which is known as a circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is the rhythm of the sleep-wake cycle. It is giving us timings. The food timings are regulated by that. The activities are regulated because of the circadian rhythm. Even the emotional and the neuronal regulation happens because of the circadian rhythm. So the circadian rhythm is actually when the light falls on the eye or the pupil of the eye, and the light signals are taken back into the brain via some pathways to this small area in the hypothalamus, and that is the circadian center. Here the center registers whether it is day or night.
Yeah.
And that is how the sleep gets initiated. But is that all that goes into the circadian rhythm, Prajakta?
No. So basically when the baby is born, they do not have the typical pattern established. So that's why you will see that all these newborns are sleeping for 2 or 4 hours, and then they're waking up, and then they're doing they're feeding, they're passing the susu potty again, and they go back to sleep. So they have something called as ultradian rhythm.
Yes.
The rhythm is changing every 2 to 4 hours.
That's right.
But by the time the child becomes about 3 months old is when this center that you're talking about, also called suprachiasmatic nucleus, starts having more rhythmicity to the day and night.
Yeah.
So you will see that the baby will sleep longer at night, will be awake more in the day. And by 6 months, most babies will have this rhythm established. So it is like an internal clock in the body which decides when we are awake, when we are asleep, when do we eat, when do we do certain things at certain time of the day.
Right.
So there are a lot of external factors which will control this internal body's clock. Like for example, the blue light that we are talking about.
Yeah, and then there are these, the toddlers, the circadian rhythm, while it is well established already by 6 months of age, the toddlers now are very prone to environmental stimulation. So they love play, they're discovering the world on their own terms. So they don't want to, they resist sleep. So there are these factors which affect your sleep-wake cycle, of course. So the environmental factors, what we talked about, this is one of them. Of course, the parental stimulation, the screen time, all these things go to forming the circadian rhythm.
True.
But importantly, there is also the effect of melatonin, isn't it?
True. So basically, melatonin, as is also called as the dark hormone, is a hormone which is secreted from our brain, and particularly the pineal gland in our brain. Now, this because it's also responsible for causing a pigment called melatonin, it is also called the dark hormone.
Makes sense.
But this hormone is very, very crucial in the induction of sleep or the initiation of sleep. So this works in very much sync with the circadian rhythm. So what happens in a baby's body is that during the day, the melatonin levels are very low. But as the evening comes, the melatonin level starts rising. That's when you get a cue to sleep at night. And it's not, what it does is that it induces sleep, but there are a lot of other functions which happen because of melatonin secretion.
True.
And the word was in buzz because, a lot, now we have the melatonin drops and melatonin strips and melatonin tablets available.
Yeah.
A lot of people world over are using melatonin for its effect in beating the, the travel fatigue or jet lag.
Yes.
And sometimes for sleep initiation also.
Yeah.
But this chemical is naturally present in our body, and which helps us to regulate the sleep cycle in our body.
Right.
So basically,
So now we should talk about how this sleep cycle is thrown out of whack.
Yeah.
Because of the screen time that is being given to the child.
Yeah.
Now, remember this, that the blue light which the child is holding in the form of an iPad or a phone or whatever it is, this blue light is in the wavelength of between 420 to 490 nanometers. And when that hits the pupil of the eye, the signals that go tell the hypothalamus that no, this is daytime yet. It's night. So this child who is at 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. holding this iPad is actually, the brain is telling him, no, it's not time to sleep yet. It's actually daytime.
Yeah.
So what is it actually doing? It's tricking the brain into thinking that this is actually the daytime, right?
So you see a child who may be physically very tired,
Yeah.
about to crash, but is not able to sleep, isn't it?
Exactly.
And we see a lot of parents complaining that he's tired, doctor, we could know that, but he's just not able to fall asleep.
Absolutely.
And if at all this child falls asleep, we see that number of times there could be fragmentation of the sleep. That is, there could be micro arousals in the night. And when what happens as a result is, even if the child has slept for 8 or 10 hours at night, the next morning when he is awake, we see the daytime consequences. So
Absolutely.
the child feels he's not had enough rest, he's cranky, he's irritable, is going to have less attention span, is going to be generally not able to carry on his day very smoothly.
Absolutely.
Imagine this happening every night,
Right. But there is another one important key factor that also gets affected because of this off sleep cycle, so to say. That is the effect of the release of growth hormone. Right?
Yeah.
So this growth hormone is a hormone which is released again from the hypothalamic area of the brain. And it is important, like the name suggests, of course, for the growth, but it is also important for muscle tissue repair, for protein synthesis, for a lot of neurohormonal, regulation,
True.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So fortunately or unfortunately, in this case, when the child's sleep cycle is off, it gets released in the deep sleep phase.
Yeah.
So when the child is hitting the deep sleep button, that is when the growth hormone pulsatile surges happen of the growth hormone. So imagine a child who's not actually able to sleep deep because, like Dr. Prajakta mentioned about the REM fragmentation, right? So it's a fragmented sleep throughout and the child has not hit the deep sleep button. And so the growth hormone also gets affected.
Yeah. So if these kids are on the screen, in the long term, you are saying that the growth will also get flattened.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And but apart from that, as we mentioned, that growth hormone doesn't only play an important role in the growth of the child, but it is also the time where a lot of muscle rehabilitation or muscle repair is happening.
Yeah.
Our immune cells are getting refreshed. So all of these bodily functions are also going to get affected if your child is hooked onto the screen past the evening time.
Correct.
That's the
Right.
idea.
So now we've understood that this blue light is actually is influencing the child's sleep-wake cycle. So all this environmental stimulation is happening. So your circadian rhythm, while it is internally regulated, but is affected by so many external factors.
But
right?
Lakshmi, when you say that there's an external factor which is controlling this internal clock, and in this case, it's not controlling it in an efficient way by using a screen, we, I think, have a silver lining here that if we could do something to make sure that we environmentally control this internal clock, I think there's a hope that we could come back to where we should be. Isn't it?
We'll be addressing this in much more detail in the solutions, which will be the part 2 of the podcast. So let's get to that.
Okay, so then the first part, we saw that the brain is being tricked by the blue light to understand its daytime, even when the body is tired and actually the hormones like melatonin should come in play and they're not able to come because of this blue light. Let's understand and go to the second part, which is very important part in the child's overall development, is the language and social skill development. And the effect of screens on this, which is also famously called as the video deficit effect.
Actually, isn't that true?
Yeah.
So when we talk about language and milestones, we are talking about language development as young as 2.5 months.
Yeah.
So it's not language as we understand, but all this cooing, gurgling that the child is making these noises. Then the child starts to babble at around 6 to 9 months, where the child is saying bab, 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 mam, 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 these kind of sounds. And then goes on to say monosyllabic words, making small sentences by 2 to 3 years, and then more nuances into this. This is all a part of language development. Now, how does this language get developed? Is by human interaction. So we have a mother looking at this newborn child and talking to that child. So when the mother says, or talking in endearing terms, the child seems to respond back. And that is how a language has developed here, right?
Yeah.
And then go further on when the child is a toddler and the child is pointing at, let's say, look at the child. The child is, so the child is pointing at it and the parent looks at it as well. And here is a communication that has developed. So for all this, we've understood there is human interaction.
Yeah. And it's actually the serve and return. So when the baby is doing some gesture and the parent is responding, that's when the neuronal connections are formed and deepened.
Yeah, that's beautifully said.
Yeah.
Serve and return. That's the exact thing.
That's the thing that's happening. And if imagine that you have a screen in your hand, you get very less chances to do that, because however interactive the screen could be, it is not a parent or a caregiver who is responding back by changing the tone of the voice, the context in which they are talking, and the small connotations that they have in the voice.
The attention of the child, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is something that is very important to understand. If you understand how the development of the language happens, we will understand that what it takes for that language to develop.
True.
Right?
But how are the screens affecting this? And what's the, I mean, there's a term called 2D barrier effect.
Yes.
And what's that? I mean,
So let's go into this a little bit more in detail. So what is the 2D barrier effect is? Here is a lot of toddlers are taught on screens. So there are these so-called educational videos that we talk about. The child is taught A, B, C, D and God knows what all on
I never understood the logic of a 1-year-old saying A for apple, B for ball. I mean, how does they, I mean, how
even understand what is an A and what is a B, isn't it? Yeah. So here we are showing an object on the screen saying this is apple and the child is looking at it, apple, apple, apple. The child knows A for apple. Cut to real life. There is an apple lying in the fruit basket and the child is looking at it lost because he is not able to relate to what is seen on the screen and what is lying in the basket. Right. So this is the barrier we are talking about. This is the 2D barrier. He is not able to translate a 2D image into a 3D object. Right? So that's what is a 2D barrier.
I think there was an experiment conducted around the same topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there were the kids who were shown that the adult was shown hiding a certain toy somewhere, and then the kid went and found where the toy was. But if the same kid was shown a video of the adult doing that and then left into the room, he was lost.
Correct.
He was not able to find the toy. However, then what happened was the adult came into the room and started giving instructions. Or while watching the video, the adult gave the instructions saying, see, look, the toy is being hidden behind the cupboard over there. And when the child entered the room, he could go navigate, go near the cupboard and find it.
Right.
So, this 2D effect that you're seeing is absolutely right because they are not able to relate that the apple in front of me is the same apple that I've seen in Cocomelon.
Yeah.
That's the...
Yeah. So the apple requires all your 5 senses. You need to touch it, taste, texture, smell it. That's what makes an object and not by just the picture that you're looking at on the screen, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the 2D effect and the video deficit effect is essentially this part.
This also brings me one incident that there was a 2.5 or 3-year-old boy who could know tables up to 10. Okay.
Wow.
And he had mugged up all because he was watching some number blocks and some other things.
Right.
And when it actually came to utilizing it to daytime, for example, how the clock moves in ripples of 5,
he's not able to it. Yeah.
So this is the same thing. So parents often feel that they are learning educational videos, but is it age appropriate?
Actually, that's the key word here, age appropriateness. There's no point in a 1-year-old saying ABCD or 1 to 10 because they don't know what is ABCD or what is 1 to 10. So it really doesn't make a difference.
True.
But this we talked about the 2D barrier and the video deficit effect. But a lot of parents say that हमारा बच्चा TV नहीं देखता, but the TV देखता भी नहीं है, चल रहा होगा but TV देखता नहीं है, वो अपना खेल में खेल रहा है, or he is playing on his own and the TV is running only in the background. Is that okay?
Not at all. So we are talking about the background TV or active versus passive television. So let's be clear, television is television. And that screen time is still going to be counted as a screen time.
Right.
But what's exactly happening in this scenario is that many times parents, especially if you see in Bangalore, a lot of parents would have evening calls.
Yes.
And probably that's the time nanny has gone. It's past 8 p.m. and how to keep the child engaged because the child is not going to sleep till 12.
Right.
So there's a TV or some iPad or some screen which is playing in the background and the parent is busy working on their screen, which is work related, of course. But though the child may be playing by himself, not really engaging into the background TV or any screen that's playing, what is happening is the central auditory processing in our body gets slowed down.
Right.
There's a lot of ambient noise, which is actually limiting to understand basic words that are spoken. So to differentiate words which are very similar sounding, cap, cat, the very similar sounding words, child is often not going to understand the difference between that. That is one. Secondly, imagine having constant background noise. It just fatigues your brain, right? And then you're not able to receive anything further.
Yeah.
That is happening.
The other thing, most of my MPD, I had a German couple who had come in with a kid. And so just anecdotally, I was asking them that how does it feel to be in India? And the fathers told me that, how do you live with this constant noise behind you? I just can't concentrate. So this is, of course, a different scenario we are talking about, but ambient noise does have a lot of effect on our activities, isn't it?
Yeah. And the other part that I can relate to at this moment is, suppose the child is playing and he wants to share something with you and comes to the parent or the caregiver who is in the room. probably they are working or they are watching the content that's going on the screen. They are glued.
Yeah.
So that interaction is going to be very superficial, limited. And many a times we lose that opportunity for social connection or connection with the child when the background noise is going on.
Right. So and in fact, they say that the silent parent phenomenon, whereas there's this parent in the background who is physically present, but mentally not engaging with the child because there's already entertainment going on, is speaking actually 500 to 1,000 fewer words to that child. So there is an opportunity lost here to learn, to interact, to communicate. All this has been lost because of the background music. So even that is a no-no. If we can just say that very clearly.
Of course.
Right?
But I also understand that suppose this child was playing, the depth of the play would also get affected, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, they don't engage in complex play.
So they don't want to be, the play is going to be superficial. If my tower breaks, I may not have that much patience to go back, build the tower again, or to understand if there's another way I could build the tower.
Right.
So it's, though we may see that the background television is not apparently making any impact, but it is making significant impact in a lot of domains that we don't know about, right? And today we have had the chance to explain it to parents.
So, all right.
Just to recap, we saw how the blue light tricks our brain. We also saw the effects of screen on the language and the social communication and development in children. And this brings us to most important, or the third point, also affecting the also called as the executive of our brain, or the CEO of our brain.
Right.
We are talking about the prefrontal cortex.
Absolutely. So we are talking about a very important part of the brain that's called the prefrontal cortex. It is also called the master of the brain, and it's located right behind our foreheads. So this prefrontal cortex actually works almost like a CEO of a company. Right. So it is responsible for planning of a task, for execution of the task, how to manage if a certain task doesn't happen. It is also responsible for switching of tasks in case something else has to be done in between. So we understand that it is important for impulse control. True. It is important for exhibiting inhibitory control on a certain activity which is not to be done. Right? And it is also responsible for cognitive flexibility, wherein, you're able to switch and we are able to adapt along the way. So that is how important the prefrontal cortex is. So how does it still
affect? For a child, I think the prefrontal cortex that you're explaining about is very important, even in a simple thing as play. So suppose he's building a tower of cube, and he intends to do it as tall as he wants to, but for some reason, the tower is shaky and it falls. So he modifies his plan, then thinks, what's the other way that I can do it? Or can I make a train from the same tower? So there are multiple things which are happening, right? And these children are able to come up with deeper ideas and more creative thinking and switch between, okay, if this is not working, can I do something else with the same blocks? All this thinking is coming from the prefrontal cortex. And actually in these children, if you see, the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. It is in the process of developing, starts by 2 years, and you will see that a lot of times the toddler who has a very bad tantrum at 1.5 years, when he starts becoming 2.5 years, 3 years, he is able to wait for his turn. He is able to take the instructions from the teacher, open page number 3, line number 2, or something like that, right? So he is able to wait for his turn to come. He is able to take the command, execute it, and something goes wrong, he's able to, find his way or navigate his way through it. But interestingly, this prefrontal cortex is not developed fully till about 25 years of age.
Wow, so that's
a long process. So therefore, even when they turn 18 and they are graduating, going to the university, the judgment part of it, the impulse control part of it, it's going to mature over a period of time. And that's why we see
important time.
So it's a long process, but we see the effects of the maturing or developing prefrontal cortex and a very well developing prefrontal cortex and simple little tasks of everyday play in a child's life, right?
So basically it is developing from the social cues, isn't it? So what the child sees around him, how to adapt, how to change the style of play, when do you sort of wait your turn, when do you sort of manage your anger, all these things, right? So this is all happening with day-to-day real life situation.
True.
Right? So what happens when a screen is given to the kid now?
So basically when the screen is there, and typically when we have the smart screens now, one video the child doesn't like, and if they're watching reels, after every 30 seconds they have an urge to, go to the next, scroll the next. So there is no time for them to understand if I'm not happy with something, I can sit with it or come back to it sometime later. there is constant new thing that comes in.
True.
As a result, there is instant gratification on things that is happening to them. So these children may be hooked on to watching television for hours, but if you ask them to complete a simple task, as simple as finishing their meal at the table,
Right.
they are not going to be able to do this.
Absolutely. Or pay attention to any task.
And feel very frustrated.
For sure, for sure.
know.
So, and they're also missing out on the real life opportunity of playing outside.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Where this prefrontal cortex would have been developing at a different level altogether.
True, true.
So the screen is actually limiting their brain development in a way because they are missing out on real world play.
True.
Right? So this is about the prefrontal cortex that is so important. We understand that, these children actually have a lot of neuroplasticity, what we call it, which means that the brain is constantly wiring and rewiring based on the impulses that the child is getting all the time. So if it is the wrong kind of impulses, it in fact even forms a behavior-like pattern.
So very addictive behaviors are formed easily.
Absolutely.
Especially with screens and the neuroplasticity. I think the combination is very bad.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. So the effect of the screen on the child in terms of instant gratification is actually mediated by another substance that is secreted in the brain. And that substance, I think most of the people are very well aware of this term called dopamine.
True.
Right?
True.
So dopamine is something that we commonly use, especially the adults who have been into gymming. And who are sort of into some kind of exercise and sports, the endorphins, the happy hormones, or the dopamine hits. These are the things which cause us to have
That's a very popular reel,
Right.
neurotransmitter on the reels.
Right.
Yeah.
So the instant sense of pleasure or happiness that one gets, that is because of this chemical called dopamine.
Yeah. So dopamine basically is a neurochemical which is secreted in our brain and is actually helping the two neurons or the brain cells to communicate with each other.
True.
And very typically it is associated with pleasure or a very happy experience. And also it just not makes you happy when you experience that, but the anticipation of that happiness brings more happiness.
Actually.
Or pleasure in that. So as a result, imagine that if you are hooked on to watching a reel, one after the other, there's a dopamine spike happening. You don't want to stop the reel, right?
Correct.
And there's an endless scroll that keeps on happening.
Right.
So it is the ding, 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 like happens in the your casinos.
Yeah,
the slot machine. So every time it dings, it triggers.
Yeah, the three pattern gives you that instant sense of joy, isn't it?
You want to keep doing it.
You want to keep doing it. And not only that, it's not just the dopamine high because of something happening, but in anticipation also, your dopamine is already surging up. And let's say you take away the screen from the child at that time, the dopamine level crashes. And when that crash, there is a meltdown in front of you. This is a child who is howling and screaming because the screen has been taken away. Is it because are you trying to sort of, you would say that, it's a bad habit, I need to take it away. But what has happened here that the dopamine was on its surge up and you removed it immediately and the child is not able to regulate it.
Yeah.
There is an emotional dysregulation that has happened. It's the brain telling, I'm not ready for this crash to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
And they're not equipped with understanding, okay, I'm frustrated at the moment because the screen is taking. How do I bring down my frustration?
Right.
What do I do to? Because we have not adapted them. Because invariably what is happening is the minute the child cries, and I know that if the child cries at a certain level, he knows that my parent is going to give me the screen.
Correct.
For maybe another 5 minutes.
Right.
So it just goes on a roller coaster. It's like the seesaw happening.
Right.
That keeps on. And these children have not learned the coping capacity when something unpleasant is happening to them. So as a result, they don't know, and they invariably have a tantrum or a meltdown at that point in time.
Unfortunately, the brain also has a habit of actually down-regulating the receptors.
Yeah.
So when you are constantly used to this high, the receptors in the brain stop responding to lower levels of dopamine, and there's a down-regulation of it, such that slower activities or activities that do not give you such a high don't work on your brain, and it's not going to give you the same high again. So it's literally like being a junkie, where you're shooting up whatever drugs into your vein, and then you don't get the same high, you're looking for the next kick. Right? So this is a typical thing that happens where the child is not able to manage day-to-day activities, which is much slower, which requires time, patience, perhaps a little bit of boredom even. They have to be able to manage their boredoms. A lot of parents say that बच्चे में ठहराव नहीं है. ठहराव is like the ability to sit and play in one place is not there.
Yeah.
So this is something that's been very...
I think what you're trying to say is the same thing, that today one cartoon is very exciting for me. The same thing is not exciting me anymore.
Right.
It's like that. They want something more faster,
Right.
more stimulating than that. So far, Lakshmi, we have developed into various ways the screens are affecting different parts of the child's development,
Yeah.
right? But is it only at that period of time, or we see the cumulative and the long-term effects of these changes that are happening?
Right.
And we were quite surprised, and the whole world was also stunned by few restrictions on social media usage that came around for, from lots of countries and more countries. And as we also are in Karnataka, we also have imposed the similar
That's true. A
this
social
thing
media ban.
on kids under 16 years of age. So we will now shift to understand that what are the effects on adolescent brain, because we do know that in the spectrum of childhood, the adolescent brain is slightly different in terms of the way they wired, they think, they act. And what will be the effects of, I'm intrigued to know, what will be the effects of screen on the adolescent brain?
Right,
Isn't
right.
it? So
The
with
adolescent brain is actually more vulnerable in a way because they are going through a lot of pubertal changes.
Yeah.
There are a lot of hormone surges that are already happening to them.
yeah.
This is a brain which is actually so delicate that, it could tip this way or that way. And the wrong kind of exposure, especially when we talk about the social media and the screen time, it affects a lot. There are so many studies done on it, isn't it?
True.
Right.
So I remember this Gusto trial, which is done in Singapore.
Singapore,
okay?
yes.
So what they basically did, were they followed up these children who were exposed to screens very early on in their life, and they continued to monitor their behavior and a lot of functions in terms of like executive functions and a lot of other domains in the development when they became adolescents.
That's true.
So what they found was that a lot of these kids had several issues as far as the executive functions are concerned, the language development is concerned, and not only that, many of these adolescents had significant mental health repercussions of this.
Wow.
In form of increased predisposition to anxiety and depression, as much as twice the general population.
Yeah, absolutely.
so
And
that
they,
is-
a lot of 8-year-olds were found to have a lot of cognitive ability which was not well developed at that time. So 2 years is when they started the trial, and then they went on to see how much was the screen exposure, and they kept periodically measuring the MRIs of these kids, and that's how they came to know about what are the changes that are happening in the brain. So imagine we are actually looking at structural changes in the brain as well.
And the long-term effects of screen,
That's
not just
true.
the immediate ones.
That's true.
right?
See, adolescents, in fact, not just the anxiety and depression, what you mentioned, there is a lot of this vulnerable population which is looking for validation. So, the likes and the comments and all these things, when they don't get enough,
Yeah.
there is a sense of depression that the child feels or the teenager feels at that time because he's not getting enough. There was this famous movie on Netflix called Adolescence,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which was very pertinent, which spoke very pertinently and very poignantly about the problems of social media on this young growing brain, right?
True.
And but a lot of parents say that, but games what they play, the games that they play online, it's supposed to make them sharper.
So this is a new addiction that's there around the corner. So whether the games or the video games are still screens, yes, they are screens, and they will be counted in the screen time.
Yeah.
And they do have the same effects as screens have.
Right.
That's one thing that we should make it very clear. But we have also seen a lot of kids, especially the pre-adolescents and the adolescents, who are hooked on to playing these video games
true.
3 or 4 hours in a day.
Yeah.
And to an extent, the impact of this is, and all of this, if you watch, these video games are very fast paced.
True.
They are racing games. They are also games where a lot of
Aggressive.
violence and aggression is used. And a lot of these teenagers may also externalize these behaviors in day to day life. So they are impulsive. They want to use the same gestures when they are talking, the same kind of language, and the interaction also becomes. So there's a lot of externalization of these things that's happening.
Actually.
And many of these actually end up having gaming disorder.
True.
So it's also a mental health condition.
Right. It's called, there's a term for it, isn't
Yeah,
it?
internet gaming disorder. It's
That's
a term.
true.
So it is a legit disorder that's there.
Right.
So
I'm reminded, of an incident in the OPD, in the outpatients that I saw the other day, where there's a couple who came in with a teenage son of theirs, and the child had already started his vacations.
Yeah.
And so now the mother goes on to say that the child is not able to function normally or speak normally, because in the morning, the moment the child gets up at 11 a.m. in the morning, he grabs the laptop even before he's going into the washroom to do his brushing and all of that. He doesn't eat food because he is consumed into 3 to 4 hours of gaming. And as a result, the child starts feeling tummy aches and pains. And they actually had come to me for tummy aches and pains. So while I was just asking them the history of diet, this is what the mother tells me. And so much that, when he says no more anything, no more gaming, and they switch off the Wi-Fi, the child becomes so aggressive that he became violent towards the mother.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a genuine concern now that this is not something that needs to be allowed, or at least, these brains are not ready to regulate themselves.
True.
Right?
The other important aspect of screen exposure, particularly post-COVID, we saw a lot of them, was the parents' laptops were used for school work. Okay, parents' screens, sometimes mobiles, laptops, or whichever screens were available at home for homeschooling or the online schooling that happened. Ironically, and I used to do pediatric rheumatology consults online at the time, and I saw a lot of kids who are coming with aches and pains and unusual symptoms. Okay, and when we go to the depth of, these were mostly kids who were between 8 and 14 years of age.
True.
And when we went into the depth of understanding what was happening, because it seemed that the symptoms were not very organic. And many of them have been watching a lot of adult content, which was accessible to them on the parents' laptops. There was no supervision at the time because the parents were feeling that they are on the school work. So, the children obviously were not talking about all this to the parents and silently consuming it. So imagine, getting exposed at an inappropriate age to such content. You are not able to handle the load that comes with it. So many of these, actually, we needed to have behavioral counseling done for a long period of time to get over the trauma of experiencing something which was not age appropriate. So this is another aspect of having screens in hands, and we also get exposed to something which is not age appropriate at all. That's
So unchecked and unregulated screen time is definitely a
bad.
problem. We understand that, right?
Yeah.
I think we have come to at the end of the part 1 of this podcast,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So I think at this time we have understood the effects of screen time on the circadian rhythm, which is the sleep-wake cycle. We've understood its impact on language and development. We've understood its impact on emotional regulation and the effect on adolescence. But hey, it's not all bad news. We are going to talk about the solutions.
How to use them.
Yeah, perhaps some tips we can pass on along the way to the parents, how to manage or how to leverage internet or the screen for more, constructive purposes for the child. So we're not saying that it's not possible in this day and age to have no screens at all, but let's understand in a more better way how we can use these screens to better our child's brain.
So perhaps the part 1 of our podcast today is the first step to understand the impact of the problem and to understand what's the extent, and then we take the right steps to navigate through it, isn't it?
Right.
Use our executive functions here,
Yeah.
and maybe navigate our way through it. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel Cradle to Campus, and stay tuned for the next part.